Daryl Morey has had a nearly perfect offseason, nailing in the Sixers' top targets such as Paul George, Caleb Martin, Andre Drummond, and a ton of other talent to bring this team to a true championship contender. But with one roster spot remaining, the Sixers continue to be connected to Philadelphia product Marcus Morris. I want to dive into the latest reports in this video here, as well as highlight my thoughts on whether that would be a good fit for that final roster spot, talk a little bit about a new name that has entered the conversation potentially that could give Morris some competition, and highlight an awesome little farewell message from a member of the Sixers that should be remembered fondly in the Sixers allure, a guy that will no longer be playing for the team, but should always have a special place in our hearts. Now, before I dive fully into it, I do want to take a quick break to get a word from our sponsors, so hang with me and we'll be right back on the other side.
And while the Sixers have to put their hands together and pray that their star players can be healthy for the playoffs and give this team a chance, you are in control of preventing any crippling damage that could be occurring to your computer and other devices. The best way to do this is by utilizing NordVPN and clicking the link in the description to this video. Whether it is the risk of free public Wi-Fi, phishing scams, password attacks, ransomware, malware, or whatever next tactic is up hackers' sleeve, it is important to be one step ahead. A VPN stands for a virtual protective network, which masks your IP address and prevents anyone who shouldn't have access to your data from having it. But what's different about NordVPN is its trademarked Threat Protection Pro and advanced dark web monitoring. So whether you're a frequent user of your local coffee shop shady Wi-Fi, constantly getting emails that you can't tell are legit, or use the same password for every platform, NordVPN is the best way to make sure you're covered. With robust encryption, 24/7 customer support, and up to 10 devices being able to be protected under the same account, NordVPN is a full-service experience with the mission to make the internet a better place. So click the link below for access to an exclusive offer from us here at Sixers Digest for 4 months of additional services, along with Nord's risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee.
So I want to start by diving into the latest reports here. We did get this blasted out from NBA Central, saying that the Sixers and Cavs are the leaders in the Marcus Morris sweepstakes. This is no real surprise here. These are the two teams that he did suit up for last year and showed some real signs of life in each of those locations. We remember him fondly for what he did here with the Sixers, did hit some big-time shots, and frankly ended up being more important to this Sixers team than I think most expected when he came over in the deal. And for that Cavs team, he was a little bit of a lifeblood of offense, especially going to the playoffs. And Morris has been extremely open about how fondly he remembers his time in Philly. We do know that this is a guy who is the heartbeat of the city, even beyond just about anyone else that you could name. And even a moment like tonight, that as I record this, he's playing in the championship at the Danny Rumpf Classic. I did have an opportunity to pop by and check out for 3 nights of games. Had to sit out tonight, could not get there in time. But he still looked to be Marcus Morris, that he had a little bounce in his legs. Saw a nice dunk from him where he picked up quite the head of steam, was launching threes on the perimeter and did get hot for a couple stretches of time. Still playing with his food in his mid-range, getting to his spots on the floor. He's just a certified bucket getter and has been for well over a decade at this point. So we know how good this guy is as a talent, and for what it's worth, I still think he can play. You can't get a ton to read off the statistical breakdown, but still a guy who shot over 40% from last year, 42.9% from the corner three, and 40.3% from beyond the arc overall. He is 34, but he is a guy who very clearly wants to be back. And kind of my read on the situation as a whole, I think the situation is purely that Marcus Morris very clearly wants to be back with the Sixers. The Sixers aren't as sure if they do want Marcus Morris back. Now, I'm not saying that this is a no or it's not going to happen. I think the likely situation is the Sixers do have their eye on a specific player, and if that does not work out, I think Morris is likely the fallback plan. For what it's worth, that's a pretty good option as a 14th piece for Marcus Morris. And as much as we want to be critical of each and every one of these roster spots, the reality is that it is not going to be swayed their championship odds by whoever this player is. Yes, they still have needs, but the real upgrade that I think will be that missing piece, that final touch to this roster, I think will happen midseason and have to do with trading that KJ Martin contract and whatever draft picks are necessary to acquire that. Now, with the Sixers team, we know that these stars are in place. That if you want to talk about who actually is going to move the meter and who will have the role in winning the championship, it's guys like Joel Embiid, it's guys like Tyrese Maxey, and it's guys like Paul George. That as much as I think it would be good to have Marcus Morris around for the vibes, I don't know if he's swaying that meter, but with that being said, I don't know if there's any other names out there that really will have that much of an impact at this point in the game. There are much higher valued free agents at this point than most off seasons, I would say, but for what the Sixers need, I don't think this would be a bad use of roster spot. And to take a look at this depth chart overall, overall, we can see this here. This is a pretty complete team. We see the guard rotation fairly filled out. Tyrese Maxey, Kyle Lowry, and Reggie Jackson mixing at the point guard. Might get a little bit of Jeff Doughton Jr. as well, who is on that two-way contract. At the shooting guard spot, Kelly Oubre, Eric Gordon, and Jared McCain. Small forward, Ricky Council and Paul George, of course. Justin Edwards, I also think might get a little bit of an opportunity this year. I am intrigued by him. Had a chance to speak with him at the Rumph as well, and was really impressed with he does seem to be embracing his defensive identity, which I do think in the long run is the role that he can grow into. I think he's going to end up a little bit cut from like that Derrick Jones Jr. style of player. Jones Jr. more of an athlete than Edwards, but that same kind of defensive mentality that they do bring, that commitment to going along the perimeter, that's kind of the niche that I think he can carve out at the NBA level, and he is a high caliber talent that it is worth taking a chance on, especially in that undrafted market. Now, the power forward position is clearly where the need is, and this is somewhere where Marcus Morris does come into play. But there is Caleb Martin, there is KJ Martin, and then neither of those guys I would consider the true power forwards either. And then at center, Joel Embiid, Andre Drummond, and Adem Bona. Now, a couple of conversation points that have been brought up, that Daryl Morey was on the Rice Ricky Sanchez podcast that seem to indicate these Sixers are essentially deciding, do they need to invest in another center, or are they good with what they got? Is Adem Bona ready to take on day one minutes? We will see if that is the case. He's obviously not going to be playing when his team is fully healthy, but in the non-Joel Embiid games, he will be looked at as the backup center, which Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey do not tend to trust rookies to a high caliber of an extent, so that would be high praise if they go in with that trust here. But for Morris, I do wish he was a bit better as a rebounder and particularly as a defender. That those are not areas of his game which he shines, and the defense I think is especially porous at times, but he is a professional bucket getter. He is a guy that does bring a little bit of grittiness, a little bit of toughness that I think this team could use overall, so I wouldn't be upset by any means if that ends up being the move. Won't be jumping for joy, won't be ready to start planning our parade down Broad Street, but I do think it would be cool for Marcus Morris to be a part of this, and he does feel like he fits that mold of, local season guys that have been around, the Kyle Lowrys that are already on this roster, the Eric Gordons that are already on this roster, the experience that those guys bring. I do think Marcus Morris fits that bill. Now, there was another name that did enter the conversation that I did want to pull up here, and that being Killian Tilly. We got this quote from NBA Central saying that the Golden State Warriors are showing a strong interest in Killian Tilly, and then it writes out that Tilly returned to Spokane, rehabbed, recovered, and ramped up for training camp workouts in the late spring/early summer with the hopes that he'd latch on with another NBA team. The 6'9" forward had a number of feelers with strong interest coming from the Golden State Warriors and the Philadelphia 76ers in particular. Now, when actually diving into the full article in the context, it did feel like this was a little bit more in the past tense than something that is ongoing negotiations. It does seem like the Warriors are the team with the inside track if they do choose to use that as a signing there. I won't say and pound the table that I'm a massive Killian Tilly guy. He's a fine player, an intriguing shooter, an intriguing kind of stretch forward option, but not a guy that I've labeled as one of my guys, but did want to throw him into the mix here as a name that has at least been mentioned. Now, the other guy that I did want to bring up as well is a dude that will bring fond memories, I think, certainly to me and I hope all Sixers fans, and that is Furkan Korkmaz here, as we finally got his goodbye from the Sixers that he tweeted out to the Sixers family. I didn't have a chance to say goodbye, but now I want to take a moment to do so. Thank you to the Sixers organization, to the amazing fans, and my coaches and teammates. Your support and love have been incredible. I've made incredible friendships along the way, and I'm grateful for every moment spent on and off the court. We've shared so many good and tough times together. Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, you will always hold a special place in my heart. Thank you for the memories and the journey. Now a new chapter begins in my career. So Furkan will be back playing overseas this season. A bit disappointing there, but I do hope at some point Furk does get another NBA chance. He is a guy that I think in the right situation can be an NBA talent. Let's not forget this dude has played notable minutes in playoff series for the Sixers team in different portions, and before the trade last year, he was the second longest tenured player on the Sixers, only behind Joel Embiid there. So shout out to Furk, all love and wishing you the best moving forward. Disappointing that he did kind of get squeezed out, and for reasons that this is not a guy I'm sticking up for and saying deserve more minutes. I understand why the decisions were called that way, but will always have a nice place in my heart for the big moments, the big shots that he did hit. There were a lot of good times with Furkan Korkmaz, so shout out and ride off to the sunset. I don't know if it's going to be quite the same positive experience if Marcus Morris, but it does feel like they do have somewhat of a similar fan favorite vibe, that I do think there will be the Marcus Morris crew of people loving him if that ends up being the choice, but we will see what Daryl Morey does from here. Ultimately, still that last roster spot with the biggest news we are waiting for in the Sixers world. We'll learn a lot about this team when that is fully set in. And once again, to take a peek at the depth chart, that this team is relatively decided as is, but we will be waiting on that news there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Marcus Morris is the right selection for that final roster spot? Is there another name that you guys have in mind? Let me know below. Also, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping this, and liking this video if you have not already. I'll be talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.